Good morning, everybody. Auronnj here with another Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis video, and today's video is going to be different than the other guides, the beta sneak peeks you've been getting. This one is a fun video because this week we got access to Chapter 2 of the main Final Fantasy VII game in Ever Crisis. Now, they're saying that the whole game, the whole Final Fantasy VII original game, is going to be available on launch. Well, in Chapter 2, that's as far as we can get. We get access to the one of the most memorable / famous scenes in the Final Fantasy VII franchise, the Cloud cross-dressing scene. Cloud puts on his dress, goes and, gives Don Cornelio the slip, threatens to cut his balls off, all of that stuff. It's in Ever Crisis, but how does this scene compare to the two previous versions that we got? Both the Final Fantasy VII OG version and the Final Fantasy VII remake version. Well, it holds its own in some ways, so let's break it down. Now, the first and most obvious place to start here is which version of Cloud actually looked the best, and this is by far and away the easiest version to judge. The Final Fantasy VII remake that's on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 using modern HD graphics with many different dress choices for Cloud blows the other two games out of the water, and it's simply just not fair in this case. With the original Final Fantasy VII game, no matter how near and dear that game is to your heart, it was using PlayStation 1 graphics. You're comparing it to a PS5 game or a brand new mobile game in 2023, both of which have, degrees of processing power more than the PlayStation 1 did. Still, it's not close though between the phone game and the PS5 version. The PS5 version is the best. You got the 3 dress options for Cloud. All 3 of them really look amazing. I personally like the first one the best, even if it's not the rarest one to get. It is my favorite of the 3, and it's also the one that you get access to in Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. So just comparing those two side by side, obviously the PlayStation 5 version wins. Okay, that was the easiest thing to judge on. Let's judge next this scene on just atmosphere and execution. Definitely one of the reasons that this is one of the more famous scenes in Final Fantasy VII history is there's that tense atmosphere. You're dressing up as a woman with your 2 women best friends and infiltrating, I don't know what to call Don Cornelio, mob boss who's trying to hook up with you. It's an awkward thing, but there's definitely it's one of the more, how about I say this? It's one of the more immersive scenes in the franchise, and that's why everybody who played Final Fantasy VII remembers it. Now, one of the first immersive parts of it is the conversation had between Aerith, Cloud, and Tifa. This is the first time that Tifa and Aerith are meeting each other. Tifa does see Aerith and Cloud sitting in the park as she drives by on Don Cornelio's wagon. Ever Crisis has that scene in it, and it has the scene where they first meet. The dialogue from the original Final Fantasy VII and Ever Crisis are actually spot on. They stay with each other on that. It's almost verbatim the same dialogue. It catches that awkwardness of Tifa and Aerith both being like, "Oh, are you Cloud's girlfriend? No, I'm not Cloud's girlfriend. You Cloud's girlfriend? No, we just met. He's not my boyfriend." And they begin to form that friendship that is, a classic in the series. So that's there. But if I'm going to compare the original game and Ever Crisis to the PlayStation 5 version, this is where I'm going to set the PlayStation 5 version aside for a second. That's such a different game. Yes, it still does capture that moment in its own way, but for me, this one comes down to the PS1 version and the phone version, Ever Crisis, because it lets my imagination do a little bit more work. Now, the PlayStation 1 version might have relied on my imagination a little bit too much, and so in this case, I'm going to give the win to the Ever Crisis version. I liked where the conversation took place for the conversation it was. Instead of the dungeon that Tifa was in. Now, I will give the original game props. I don't know what message they were trying to send with the dungeon where Tifa was hanging out in when Cloud and Aerith go meet her. That looks like a torture chamber, and there's blood on the ground. It never made sense to me that Don Cornelio was going to put his lady friends for the night in a room where blood is like running down the floors, or the floors are stained with blood. He might have been trying to send like a message to them or something. Either way, I actually prefer the Ever Crisis version in this case, where Tifa's like sitting on a couch in like a waiting room area, and that's where Cloud and Aerith meet her. That's where that conversation happens. That felt a little more natural to me, and look, like the remodeled sprite graphics, or whatever you want to call the Ever Crisis when you're on the map graphics, I thought those looked really good. It was tough to tell exactly what Cloud looked like in the original Final Fantasy game. In Ever Crisis, while it's still that same setup where it's like this background, the map is just sort of this like pre-generated background and you have the sprites moving around, Ever Crisis takes full advantage of like a phone's capabilities in 2023 and delivers a really good looking Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa, much better than the PlayStation 1's version. So I'm going to give the win in this case to Ever Crisis, but it's not actually a complete sweep when you're comparing the original Final Fantasy version to Ever Crisis in this scene, in my opinion. The thing that Ever Crisis actually misses out on, that both other games, the original and the remake, have, is Ever Crisis does not let you freely explore the mansion. I wish it did. There are parts in Ever Crisis, the new mobile game, where you can, like, it gives you control like the original Final Fantasy VII game, and you get to navigate the map. There'll be random encounters, you can find treasure chests, all of that stuff, but it does not let you explore Dawn's mansion. The scenes that you are in all look really good. The bedroom in particular, I never liked Dawn's bedroom in the original game. The bedroom in Ever Crisis, I thought they did a better job of, even if the trap on the floor is just a little bit too obvious. But I vividly remember as a kid and as somebody who played the remake, like walking around the slums, Cornelio's mansion, and there was a little bit more to the quest than what you get in Ever Crisis. Ever Crisis is definitely, at this point in the game, just telling a story. In fact, I'm trying to remember exactly how it was, but there's like 3 or 4 chapters, Ever Crisis chapters in a row, where you don't play at all. You just are watching the story. And that's during this time where Aerith and Cloud escape from the train graveyard. They're chilling in the park. Tifa drives by, skip ahead to Cornelio's mansion. You do a little bit of fighting at that point, but then it's just story, 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 story. Very little playing during the actual cross-dressing scene. So in that regard, I have to give Ever Crisis the lowest grade in terms of my ability to just play the game during this time. Instead, I sat back and experienced I experienced a version of the PlayStation 1 part of this game again in remodeled, updated graphics. And at the end of the day, I do think that's what Ever Crisis is going for. It's trying to give you that PlayStation 1 feel with an updated skin to it, with a modern bit of graphical edge. And in that case, it did a good job, but I would have just really liked to explore the mansion a little bit more. So, okay, if I had to crown a winner of the 3, because for some reason I'm going to do that in this video, I would actually give the win to the remake. I liked that you could get the different dresses. I liked how I don't know. I mean, it's a PlayStation 5 game. I can't say that a PS1 game or a phone game are going to knock the PlayStation 5 game out of the park. People have been asking me in my Discord which one I like the best to kind of compare them. I got to say, I like the Final Fantasy Remake version the best, even if as a game it is the most different from the original Final Fantasy. I mean, that, like, all of those bees in there and the guys like dressing you and doing the dances, I just thought that was really a great part in that game. Ever Crisis does a good job kind of capturing the essence of it. Really, I think the best part they do here is they capture the awkwardness of Tifa and Aerith's friendship beginning, and they kept that scene where Cloud and Tifa and Aerith all in individual ways threaten to like remove Don Cornelio's private parts. Hilarious. That's a great scene, but that's really kind of what it does. So I got to give the edge overall to the Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PS5, but Ever Crisis, hey, it's still worth playing through the scene. Sit back, get a drink, and enjoy it when you get to enjoy Ever Crisis whenever it comes out later this year. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. I rolled a bunch of B-roll during this, kind of giving you those comparisons. Let me know what you thought. All right, I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.